Hi, this is Gayle with BERNINA of Naperville, and welcome to our sixth lesson in our Bloom and Grow serge-A-Long. Now, there's no serger this time because we are quilting our flippy floppy lopsided log cabins in the hoop. Now, you can do this no matter what Bernina you have, but it's certainly easier with pinpoint placement. And you have pinpoint placement on your 590s, your 735, 770 pluses, or the upgraded 770s to plus, 790 plus, 880 plus, 790 Pro, and 990. Now, of course, there are special things on the 790 Pro, like 4-point placement, morph, and things like that. So I'm going to be using the 990. But I'm also going to talk you through some slides to make it easy for you to do this using whatever Bernina you have. Now, of course, you can also do ruler work quilting, free motion. You could even do some straight lines using the chain stitch and things like that. But I just decided, hey, why not bust out the 990, the cool new tool in the box, to tackle this month's project. So let's have a look at our supplies, what section we're doing, and all of that good stuff from the interactive handout that you will receive if you have signed up for our Bloom and Grow serge-A-Long program. And you can sign up right at BERNINAofNaperville.com. So here we are at another fabulous serge-A-Long, and we are already at lesson 6. So like we've done before, we do a class where we piece and follow the Bernina of America instructions presented by Mary Beck for this pattern that was designed by Amanda Murphy. And then on the even months, we actually quilt the sections. So we have done string piecing, and then we quilted those string piece sections. We did stitch and flip and flat lock embellishment, and then we quilted those sections. And last month, we pieced the lopsided logs. So how can you make the most of this serge-A-Long? Well, first of all, it starts with watching the BERNINA Skill Hub Bloom and Grow videos, which I said are presented by Mary Beck. And then you can follow along with our changes or our quilt as you go technique with us, usually every Fridays on the first Friday of the month. So here is our lopsided logs section, and this is what we'll be quilting. So we're going to have to do some stitch and flip on our pre-quilted piece that we have, that we keep adding to complete this section. So there are the fabric G pieces that we put away last month, and there's a skinny strip and there's a wider strip. So we're going to grab those and we're going to attach the skinny one first. And I do that with some supplies. So the supplies that we're going to need is our walking foot, and you can see there I pulled out our limited edition red walking foot. And we are going to actually use the 1/4 inch seam line on the foot itself. Then we're using an embroidery machine to actually quilt in the hoop the Wonky blocks. And we're using the BERNINA 990 with the embroidery unit, but the techniques that we're using in the video also translate well to the BERNINA 790 Pro. And in both cases, we're using the medium square clamp hoop. Some of you, particularly the 990 folk, may want to use the BERNINA 444C Echo Quilting Foot or add a Stitch 2.0 water-soluble topper, because remember we have those little flounces that are in the blocks and we don't want to get our foot stuck under there when we are doing the quilting in the hoop. I'm using a little bit of new thread. Now I know that this month, you got thread, the Serger thread in gray, and also the white thinner Metler thread and all kinds of fancy threads in your kit. But we just got the perfect quilting thread from OESD in, and I love it. It is so lint-free. It feels a little bit thicker than a regular 50 weight thread, and it was just the perfect choice for doing our quilting in the hoop. So I have wound the silvery gray color in both my bobbin, and I have it in the top, and I just thought it worked really well this month. And like I mentioned, we need that fabric G. It's that fabric that's right on top there, and there is a 2-inch by 32.5-inch strip, and there's a 1.5 by 32.5-inch strip. So the 1.5-inch piece goes on, then our Wonky block unit, and then the 2-inch strip goes on.
And you might notice that I am drawing with my fabric marking pen the lines that extend this row. Now that line that I'm drawing is going to be my cutting line ultimately. And I'm just doing that to make sure as I add my final rows that everything goes on straight.
So let's talk a little bit about stitching this down. It doesn't take very long to talk about it, to be honest with you. You're just going to press and flatten your quilt as you go unit. You're going to press your wonky block unit and your strips of fabric G if you've had them in a ball like I keep mine, you know. You're going to attach your walking foot to your sewing machine. And you can obtain a 1/4 inch seam with the Bernina walking foot by abutting the raw edge to the groove on the foot. And you can see it just there like that. And then we're just going to sew a 1/4 inch along the narrow fabric G piece and press. Then we're going to attach the wonky block unit and the other fabric G strip in the same fashion. And I even take some time to stitch down the final 2-inch piece just so it doesn't move around on me. Now, I will admit that we've shown you so many ways to quilt your Bloom and Grow project that quilting in the hoop is just one more option if you have the machinery in order to do that. I mean, some of you might even have a Q24 with Qmatic, and you might be just waiting to quilt the entire thing on your Q24 with the frame. Some of you might have a Q series sit-down long arm, and you're just planning on quilting all of that all at one go, and that's fine. I'm just offering you different ways to kind of get the old gears thinking about how to manage a quilt like this, particularly if maybe you're working with a combination machine in addition to your L890 serger.
So let's take a minute to look at our Bernina medium square clamp hoop. So it's basically a 1-frame hoop with a heavy plexiglass centering template. And you would place that 1-frame piece under your quilt and then center your block using that template. Then you use the clamp. 12 of them come with the hoop, but sometimes if you have a super thick quilt, you only are able to use like maybe 8 of them or so, okay? But you squeeze it in the hoop and then you put it over on your machine.
So mostly I used 4-point placement with the morph feature. And this feature is also available on the Bernina 790 Pro. And this feature is really handy for those who do not want to mark the center of the hoop crosshairs. I do want to give you, though, a little warning that when you're using the 7 series with the medium square clamp hoop,
you lose almost a 1/4 inch on the width.
So be careful when hooping. I actually would consider keeping your motif a 1/4 inch away from the block's outer seam, and you can do that by engaging your margins at a 1/4 inch if using the 4-point placement with the Bernina 990 or the Bernina 790 Pro. So if you're going to use a 735 or a B880 Plus, the 735 through the B880 Plus, that includes the 770 Plus, the 790 Plus, and all of those machines, Pinpoint placement grid is what you will use on these models. So that means that before you quilt, you're going to need to mark the center of each wonky block with a water-soluble blue marking pen. You can see my little dotted lines in this picture represent that. And then you're going to make like a little dot, I would say about a 1/4 inch in from each edge like this. And then that's what you're actually going to be hooping up and doing your quilting on. So you're going to use that Pinpoint placement grid to center the needle, set it, then either move to the top middle, bottom middle, side middle, or left side middle to straighten it up and get it in just the right position. Now, if you're using a Bernina 590 with the Pinpoint placement, then before you quilt, you will mark the center of each wonky block, just like you see here, just like I did before. But the 590 or the 5 series machines, they have a little bit of limitation with the size of the hoop. But what you can do is use this design, something like this, and I have a link to it in the next slide, and you hoop this 4 times to go around, and it will yield you the same look and feel that we're doing on our 990 or our 735s through our 880 plus machines. So where do these designs live? Well, these designs are designed by Amanda Murphy, and it's Quilting Design Pack 80202 from OESD, and you can get them directly from us through our Designs on Demand program.
And these are BQM files for those of you with a 790 Pro or a B990 machine.
Don't buy the designs because you actually get them on your machine. So they should be there. So check your machine for the preloaded quilt designs before you purchase. Also, for those of you with the 5 series, you may have something similar to this on your machine, and that's fine too. So just check, but the way that you're going to do it is you're going to find something that will fill that little triangle and then stitch it 4 times around. And then I touched on this, but those little flounces can get in your way, as you can see here. So the Wonky logs have the protruding flounce that makes it easy for that 26 foot to get stuck under there. So there's a couple of remedies. If you use foot number 44C, which is not ideal because it's going to reduce the area of the hoop because the size of the base of this foot is big and it reduces the stitchable area on in your hoop. So this is mostly appropriate for the BERNINA 990 and 880 plus models. But I prefer the method where you use a water-soluble topper and you can still use your 26 foot, and that water-soluble Stitch 2.0 is going to flatten down the flounces so that you can avoid the foot getting stuck under the flounce, and then it peels really easily right off of the fabric, and if you get any little bits left behind, you can just wipe it away with a damp washcloth, and that should do the trick. And then I did do a little bit of quilting in the sashing with a multi-directional stitch. I used my number 40 multi-directional foot and picked a stitch, and using the camera and the laser in combination, I was able to get these little wishbones placed on my quilt. If you have multi-directional stitches, that's almost any machine that can do that, going back to the BERNINA 1630 or the 180s or the 730, 200 Artistas, and obviously our 880 pluses, B790 Pros, and B790 pluses or B780s. These stitches still work great. You're just not going to have the camera or the laser as extra guides. And that's it. So our next lesson premieres Friday, November 1st at 10 a.m., where we will be creating and assembling the Flying Geese unit. Right, what do you think? This was pretty easy, right? And you know what? There's no right or wrong here, and just remember, at the end of the day, quilting is just adding texture. That's all you're doing. And you know what? Washing, Laura Star's steaming, and drying in a dryer fixes everything. Well, I don't think I would recommend drying this quilt in the dryer, though, because we have a lot of wonderful rayon threads and fancy stuff. Now, spot cleaning. Spot cleaning fixes everything. All right. Well, hey, I can't wait for you to tune in for next month when we make our Flying Geese units. Those are going to be really fun and joy, because we're going to bust out our cover stitch machine again for that. And I'm going to be using the L890, of course. All right, so for now, that's it. Don't forget to check out some of our other YouTube tutorials, and they live right on our BERNINA of Naperville YouTube channel, which is easy to find because it's right at youtube.com/BERNINA of Naperville, and there you can like, comment, and subscribe. Happy quilting to those over quilters out there.